Once in a while, something will happen in a transaction that will lead us to a life lesson. Here is a true story and a cautionary tale that touches on two important concerns that I have talked about in other videos. One, the importance of how your title investing is held in the ownership of your properties. And two, have you checked recently that your ownership is the way it should be? Life can be cut short, and if it does, are all your assets protected? This is Juliana too. Here's the story of my gravely ill seller and how the difference of a few hours made all the difference. My slides come with the real documents in my file with the private information blacked out. My seller entered escrow in March of 2020, right when the pandemic and the shelter at home order started. The title investing to the property was under my seller's name, a married man, as his sole and separate property. The chain of title showed that the property was transferred from his trust to himself in February. And at the same time, his wife also signed a quitclaim deed renouncing her interest in the property. The documents also show that Mr. Seller refinanced the property with a new loan at the same time. The transaction to a buyer was scheduled to close in 90 days by the end of June. My seller signed all his paperwork, including the grant deed, which would have transferred the property to the buyer upon closing. In addition, he also signed a power of attorney to his son to be used in case he was not available to sign any of the final paperwork. But there were some issues with the buyer qualifying for the new loan, so the original closing date had to be extended. Right around the end of June, when the transaction was supposed to close, my seller, who complained about certain discomfort during a routine visit to the doctor, was diagnosed with cancer. Not only that, the illness was in its advanced stages and the prognosis was not good. He only had a few weeks to live. We received this news with shock, of course. There's nothing more distressing to realize that this person who we were communicating with for 3 months was literally from one day to the next on his deathbed. As his escrow officer, our immediate concern was for the status of his ownership of the property. He owned it, as you remember, solely under his own name. Even though he had signed the grant deed and the power of attorney, these documents would no longer be valid if he passed away before the transaction could close. The property would then have to go through probate court and the sale could no longer continue. Probate could take years and cost a lot of money. What could be done? We had two options. Option number one was to have the son, who is the attorney in fact, or the person who got the power of attorney, to sign a deed adding my seller's wife on title as husband and wife as joint tenants. If you have seen my title investing video, the link of which is in the description below, you would know that this would allow my seller's wife to get the property under her rights of survivorship with no need to go through probate, and then she could continue with the sale with no interruption. Option number two is to have the son sign a deed putting the property back into my seller's trust, where it was originally for many years. Upon discussion with their attorney, it was found that the trust was set up many years ago by instruction of my seller's parents. The trust had a number of other beneficiaries, including a brother who had since passed away. The proceeds from the sale of this property would go back into the trust for distribution with all the other assets to the beneficiaries. So, why did he take the property out of the trust? Here's what we believe happened. My seller refinanced the property and took out a new loan in February. Through the refinance process, the lender must have asked my seller to take the property out of the trust so that they could lend it to him individually. This is a very common requirement of lenders. And because he was married, his wife had to do a quitclaim deed. My seller took the property out of the trust in February, but as he found a buyer in March, he probably decided or forgot to return it to the trust after the refinance was done. If the property had closed escrow before he took ill, we would not have even realized that there were any issues. However, because he was very ill and the transaction had not closed, it made us take a closer look at what happened in his chain of ownership. Whether it was presentiment or not, it was a good thing that the seller signed the power of attorney because when he became gravely ill, he was in no condition to talk or sign anything anymore. Here is a timeline of events. On Tuesday afternoon, we were told of his deteriorating condition, and it became a mad scramble with the son to figure out what to do. On Wednesday morning, the trust attorney confirmed option number 2 was what we were going to use. The ownership had to be put back into the trust before my seller passed away, or it would go into probate. So immediately, a deed was drawn, conveying the property into the trust and signed by his son as attorney in fact. By the afternoon, a special messenger had it delivered to us so that we could record it the next day. The deed was recorded Thursday morning at 8 o'clock. My seller passed away a few hours after that. Why did I put this video together? Why am I publicizing one family's grief? So that we can learn these lessons. It is important to check and confirm the title investing of all your properties. We are all doing refinances left and right. If you had to change the vesting because the lender wanted to show it a certain way in your refinance, for instance, taking it out of the trust or taking your wife off the title, you might want to remember to change it back after the refinance is done. Another thing, a grant deed, a deed of trust, a power of attorney, which was signed but not publicly recorded or used before the person dies, will be void once the person passes away. Anything can happen to us at any time. Keep your finances in shape. Review your ownership of assets from time to time. Make your wishes known to your family. Do a comprehensive will or trust and keep it up to date. Let your family know where to find the important documents. Do not leave your grieving families to piece together the pieces. The health and state of mind of our clients is very important when we are handling a transaction. If there is anything affecting their health and mental capacities, please let your escrow officer know. This was a sad story, but no matter the stress and confusion that our clients had to go through the last few days, we ultimately did what we needed to be done and put everything right, and they were very grateful. Unfortunately, this is not the first time that this has happened to me. I have had the same type of scenario 3 or 4 times through my 40-year career. Every single time the person is on his or her deathbed and the family calls me frantically to verify or change the ownership, I have always been able to help because it was not too late. But almost always, it was a matter of days, if not hours. Understanding the frantic desperation of these families during that time All I can do is stress the importance of a little advanced preparation to say to face to save future heartaches. This is Juliana too. Life, death, and your escrow. This is a story of escrow from the trenches. Thank you for viewing.